Welcome back, everyone. So today we have a very exciting episode. We are going to dive into neuroplasticity and healing through subconscious transformation. I have Krishna Avalon here with me today. Krishna is a subconscious transformation coach, a business and relationship coach. She's trained in Psych-K, and she's also a licensed and credentialed acupuncturist. She coaches clients through a simple and unique process of transforming the subconscious mind by expanding limiting or self-sabotaging beliefs, helping people feel more empowered as creators of their lives. Welcome, Krishna. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much. So nice to meet you. Nice to be here.
Absolutely. So let's dive a little bit into this. What is it that you do? What is subconscious transformation? I know I work a lot with EFT tapping and the emotion code and quantum healing. And so I, dive a lot into the subconscious mind, but share a little bit about your perspective on the modalities that you're using and how you are really helping people transition.
Yeah, and I love the work that you do, and I'm sure there's a lot of synergy, but I call it subconscious transformation only because I don't love the name Psych-K. Psych-K stands for psychology plus kinesiology. So it is a type of energy psychology. A lot of people have heard of it because of Bruce Lipton, who talks a lot about the perceptions being even more impactful than our genetics, which just blows my mind. And so I call it subconscious transformation because that's essentially what we're doing. So you can do that in a couple of sessions. And after being a practitioner forever and for lifetimes and seeing magic happen every single day, still it was time for me to grow and to learn some new things. And it would have taken something super special for me to switch career paths. But it was just like, as soon as I found out about this, I just knew, like, yes, this is what I want to learn for myself. Also, it's how I want to guide other people. So yeah, it's about our perceptions and our beliefs and how that creates our lives. And so the perceptions and the beliefs are held in the subconscious mind. The subconscious creates 90 to 95% of our lives. So why wouldn't we want to be working with that if we're people as spiritual beings who are here to love, here to grow, here to learn deeper connection with ourselves and with spirit, and to co-create with the universe and just see what's possible in our human experience. So yeah, I'm obsessed, honestly.
It is. And I think once we learn how to access the subconscious mind, and I use a lot of applied kinesiology or muscle testing as well in my own personal, healing, as well as with my clients. And so accessing the subconscious, and like you said, we're utilizing that 95% of the time, and our conscious mind roughly 5%. And so when we are working in the subconscious, a lot of it is bringing things forward from the subconscious, or bringing them from the subconscious forward into the conscious mind. So what is the difference between the conscious and the subconscious mind?
Yeah, I mean, both are very important. The conscious is going to feed into the subconscious, but the subconscious, being that it's 90 to 95% of how we create life, it's where our beliefs are held, our memories and our habits. And so it's where we're on autopilot. And for a lot of people, obviously, that is unconscious. And for most everyone I've ever met, we're operating from super limited and contracted beliefs. And, to no fault of anyone, but a lot of people aren't even aware because they're using their conscious mind like, oh, I deserve this much money. Oh, I deserve to be treated like this in a relationship. But if your subconscious is like, no, you don't, because you've never been shown that, it hasn't ever been your experience, that's what you'll keep creating over and over again and have reflected back to you in every single way, because the subconscious mind's job is to reinforce whatever belief you're in. So even if that belief is not true, its job is to seek out the information in the world to reinforce that contracted or limited belief. Or if you do this kind of work or your kind of work, expand those beliefs so that you're creating new life and new experiences that you want to be having.
Absolutely. And most people don't even recognize what those programs are that are running in the background, in the subconscious mind. And the way I explain it, when I'm doing EFT tapping, it's like you have a record player and you're playing the record and it starts to skip. Most people will pick up the needle and continue on playing the current record, where what we do is we are literally taking off the record and putting on a new record to allow for a more expansion of some of those limited belief systems that we get caught up in, we get stuck in, and we don't even really recognize them until we have that self-awareness to see that, okay, I'm having a pattern here in relationships and I'm recognizing this pattern. How do I shift the energy around, this pattern, so that way I can create a new neural pathway or a new program, so to speak, to allow myself to have different experiences. And a lot of people have a hard time doing that, because at first we have to recognize that the subconscious is running the show most of the time in our lives. And many are on autopilot. I was on autopilot for a really long time, and I didn't recognize it until I started to dive more into understanding it. And I think Bruce Lipton was probably one of the ones as well that helped me have a little bit deeper of an understanding of how important the subconscious mind is in our lives and how it can shift and change things if we are working with it.
Right. And you don't need to necessarily know what your limiting beliefs are. So in a Psych-K process, people come in, sometimes they're not quite sure what they want to work with, but their intuition or their family member or friend said, oh my gosh, you need to go and do this. And so they just show up, and that's totally fine. So in this process, you can talk about, usually I'm guiding people like, where are you stuck? Where are you feeling held back? And then where do you want to grow? Mm-hmm. And so really just knowing those two things, we break it down and we do balances in Psych-K. So the whole goal of a balance is to achieve what's called a whole brain state. And that just means the left and the right hemispheres of your cerebral cortex communicate coherently. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, then your subconscious mind expands and you can move on from a traumatic or stressful event. And there's another balance where you can create a new belief. So if the belief doesn't exist in the subconscious mind, it's not going to happen. And I always explain that like the well-traveled clear path in the forest in your mind that you've gone down a million times, it doesn't mean that that's true or good for you. And so what we're doing with Psych-K and with anything that creates neuroplasticity is we are creating a new pathway in the mind so that you can have a new experience. And that is essentially what neuroplasticity is. Mm-hmm. Just the brain's ability to change and have a new perception and be adaptable.
Absolutely. And I think that word adaptable is so key, is that many feel, and I was following this, this belief before I started to dive into this work, is that we can't change, that it's something that has been a part of our lives, forever, or it's something that we were taught. And most of us pick up these beliefs between the time we're born and roughly age 6 or 7, when we're in those theta brainwave states. And those are our observatory years. And when we are picking up how to participate in society, how to show our emotions, based off of the people around us, whether that be our parents, our peers, our teachers, we pick up these patterns, and these patterns can continue on our entire life until we recognize the pattern. And then we are open enough to say, hey, I want to change this pattern. I don't want this, to be a part of my life anymore. And so, coordinating that with neuroplasticity and having the ability to connect both hemispheres of the brain. And I know for me, when I started learning applied kinesiology, I started to muscle test, which part of the brain am I participating in the most? And it was mostly my logical side, oftentimes. And so then I was like, all right, I need to focus a little bit more on being more creative. And when I did that, I noticed a shift. I noticed a shift in my energy. I noticed a shift in my external reality, in the way that I was presenting myself in my life. And I noticed the way that people were responding to me was a little bit different, because I was carrying myself with a little bit more of a softer, more feminine energy, where before I had a much more logical kind of masculine energy to me. And so I think not only are we balancing the neural, pathways in the brain, but we're also balancing our energies as well. And that's where doing the inner work can reflect out, into our external reality.
Yeah. And I tell people this all the time: when you change your beliefs and you move on from something that you're in a repeat or feedback pattern with, your electromagnetic frequency changes. So of course you're going to experience life different in the world. I love working with people who've been like in talk therapy forever. They love their talk therapy. They've gone every week for 20 years, whatever it is, but they're still stuck. They're still angry. They're still reactive. They're still mad. And that's because intellectually, consciously, they understand why things are the way they are, but they haven't been working with the subconscious, and the subconscious is the heavy hitter. So do a couple sessions of Psych-K, and even clients are going into their therapist, and the therapist is like, what is different? What are you doing? Like, who are you?
That's fascinating. I love that. And because it shows results, right? And, we have to incorporate our thoughts are electric, our emotions are magnetic, and then our voice is an amplifier or a broadcaster. And usually in the talk therapy, at least my experience has been, we use our voice a lot, right? So we are amplifying a lot of those patterns or those beliefs, because that's what we're talking about. But I think when we're utilizing Psych-K, EFT tapping, quantum healing, we are also incorporating the emotional aspect, there as well, and the cohesion, or that, cohesiveness with our thoughts as well. And so it's like we're incorporating all three: the thoughts, the emotions, and the speaking, through that. And I know with me at EFT tapping, when you first start doing it, you ask for it's the SUDS, it's the score. Where are we at, on a scale of 1 to 10? And some people are like, oh, I have anxiety at a scale of 10. Okay, well then as we're moving through the session, it's going down, it's going down, it's going down. And then oftentimes people will be like, why did I even feel anxiety, or why did I even schedule this session? So, do you recognize those things with Psych-K as well, where you see such, and it may not happen with all clients, but you see such an immediate shift from the time they walk in, or the time you start the session to the time you end?
Always. And it's pretty quick which direction we're going to go. So sometimes people come in, and like last night I did a session and she had like 12 things she wanted to work on. She had a lot of balls up in the air, but she kind of kept repeating this one thing. And it doesn't have to be your worst trigger, your worst trauma, but it does. If we're going to do the transformation of stress balance, it's the thing that's on the repeat in your mind. What's consuming your thoughts the most? What's heaviest on your heart? What do you deal with like the most on the daily basis? And when you're sitting in the balance, focusing on that situation, that stressful event, or that trigger, or what's occupying your thoughts the most, usually whatever shifts, the answer comes through, or the energy leaves your body. So you're sitting there waiting for a physical, mental, or emotional change. And that indicates that the left and right hemispheres of the mind are communicating coherently, and then you can move on. But it's really interesting because sometimes people think that they have to come in with their biggest stress, and that's not what it is. You get what you need sitting in the balance, just focusing on whatever you're most hooked into at the moment. And so I always will see, we do that balance at the beginning of a session. They're just so much more grounded, they're clear, and then they know which direction they want to go in. If, for instance, they're going to then do a goal statement to create that new belief. So yes, to answer your question, I always see a difference. Everyone's always been noticing shifts. And then, I mean, some people after like 3 or 4 sessions, they're literally different people.
Totally different.
They're having boundaries. They're able to say no to things that aren't good enough. They're living life like they want to be living it. They're not settling. They feel empowered.
It's fascinating because I'm similar with that. People say, how many sessions do I need? I go, it really just depends on the person and how much transition or transformation we can make. Because I've had clients where it's like 1 session and I'm like, it's like a light switch, turns on. And then I've had other clients where by the third session, like you said, they are completely different than when they came in their first session. And so when we work in the subconscious mind, transformation can happen so rapidly. And so, Krishna, who can benefit from subconscious transformation?
Yeah, I love that. Really, anybody who feels like, yeah, they understand why things are the way they are in their life, but they still feel stuck, or they still feel triggered, or they still feel angry. They don't understand why they've done all these things on their list and they're not creating life like they want it to be. They're not getting what they want, and they keep repeating the patterns. And then anybody who wants to step into like the limitlessness of this human experience. There is no limit, honestly, when you start working with the subconscious mind. So my love language is holding space for people to be really empowered as creators of their lives, because that's what I've learned I'm able to do just from my own story and how I came into this work and why I'm here in this life. So that is why I'm here, is to help hold space for people to know that for themselves.
Yeah. And that is such a, you don't see that often, right? You don't see people holding space for one another often. I know that, and when I'm in my sessions too, I feel oftentimes I'm just guiding, people through their own healing journey and then holding space for them. But there was a time in my life where, I was being triggered and I was, running these patterns, and they were overwhelming my life. And the concept of holding space for someone was not even in my, my wheelhouse, let alone holding space for myself. And so, when we are working with these clients, it's a different energy that we bring, to these sessions that not everyone is accustomed to in our modern day society. And I think it takes a lot of, I think you too and I have done our own healing work to bring us to this point where we can hold space.
I love that you're saying that so much, because you can tell when somebody has been trained in something, but they're not personally integrated with the work themselves. And I have done that. I'm sure you have done that, where
yes.
you've taken a look at why you're wounded. You've done your shadow work because you've had the tools. A lot of people don't have the tools, and then you integrate those parts of yourself. And then obviously you can be present for other people because you know how to take care of yourself. So that's why, like, not everyone that does Psych-K or theta healing or quantum healing, they're not going to be the right fit for everybody, because they haven't been integrated or embodied in their own expression.
Absolutely. And I'm a strong believer too, that we attract the clients. This is funny. I don't know if you recognize this, but there's times when I might be, struggling with something, and then I attract clients that are struggling with that too. And through the session, we work on it together. It's kind of funny how the energy just through the law of attraction, it's like, okay, I'm working on healing this aspect with, my mom or something like that. And then the next day I have a client that is like, I'm struggling with my relationship with my mom. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So do you recognize that too, when you're, working with clients?
Yeah. And don't you feel like that advice that you're being asked for from other people is exactly what you need to hear for yourself? Yes, for sure. And there seems to be themes as well. Like, I'll have days where people come in and they're all exhausted, or they're all irritable, or they're all maxed out, or they all have back pain. So it is pretty funny. And then just back to your other question, your work and my work, Psych-K can be used for love. It can be used for business. It can be used for creativity, for money stuff, just really for anything. Any aspect of life where you want to move on and create bigger, more expanded life.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of people think that the work we do always has to be around trauma, or some sort of really deep traumatic experience. Now it is very helpful with that, but it can also be basic things like I'm having a hard time creating abundance in my life, or I'm struggling with my intimate, relationships. And, it doesn't always have to be some massive traumatic experience that we, had as a child or, in our lives. And it can just be something where it's simple as a pattern or a program, something that we picked up, from generationally, and so I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I hear that often that, well, what do you do? And then I explain it and people are like, oh, you must work with a lot of trauma, PTSD, which I do. But on the flip side, what we do through Psych-K, EFT, quantum healing can really be so expansive. It can really help in so many different ways.
Yeah, I find that who I'm working with a lot these days, and maybe it's because of how I speak to people, like in my Instagram stories or just my personal life, is that people want to feel more joy and they don't know why they're not. They want to be more present with their kids. They don't know why they cannot be. They want to feel more feminine, like we were talking about before we started recording. And I love working with that stuff. I've worked with a lot of women who are like super brilliant achievers, successful in their career, type A, in their masculine really beautifully. But at this point in their life, they want to be receptive. They want to be feminine. They want to be held in the masculine, and they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so it is about expanding the beliefs about it's always about being worthy and deserving of ...
Mm-hmm.
Of healthy relationship,
Connection,
money, feeling
mm-hmm.
safe, connection,
Absolutely.
Trusting ourselves. It's always about those things. And this is why this work is so beautiful, can just help people get there so quickly. Like, we don't have to give and give and give and give to receive love and acceptance, to prove our worth. We don't have to do those things.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a key point there. Many of us women and men too, we are working on how to heal both our divine masculine and feminine energy. And I know for me, I grew up in a household that my mom carried a lot of masculine energy, and my dad had more of that kind of feminine, more passive kind of energy. So I picked that up as a child. And so, being an Aries, I have that go get 'em kind of spirit and attitude, where my relationship suffered a little bit because I was always standing in my masculine energy. And I didn't even recognize that I was doing that until I started to learn, about the harmonizing and the balancing of energies, and how that masculine energy is very giving and the feminine is very receiving. And I was like, why am I always giving and not receiving? And so just, creating that correlation, between the masculine and feminine energies, the right and left hemispheres of the brain, and, my childhood experience, and understanding that, oh, wow, Tanya, you need to take a step back and really balance out your energies. And I do feel I am attracting more of that with my clients, more women who are like, I want to stand in my feminine, more. I'm 80% masculine energy all day, and I'm only utilizing my feminine 20%. So how do we balance that out? Is there any advice that you can give, to men or women who are looking to balance out these energies right now?
Yes, I love that, because that's exactly some of the stuff that I've had to balance and integrate and outgrow myself, because I feel my most true when I'm in my feminine. I love my feminine energy. It's very receptive, very soft, very open, very nurturing, very brave enough to keep my heart open. I feel the strongest when I'm soft, honestly. And not that women and the feminine is only soft, but I can say from my own experience and from all these people I've worked with now, that usually we're in that masculine because we feel like we're not deserving of receiving what we want. We are not worthy of having our needs met, for instance, having somebody else take care of us or give us love. Because, I don't know about you, but I was raised Catholic, and I'm a woman. And so there's all this programming in my family and from that upbringing of how you have to be a good girl and how you have to be a good person.
Don't
And
speak
how
unless you're spoken to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and doing things that you don't want to do to show that you're good.
Yeah.
Like that martyrdom
victim
Yeah.
mentality. Yeah, victim consciousness. And
Yeah, big time martyr.
mhm.
So yeah, that's so boring.
It's tough too, Krishna, because in that religion, it's very masculine, very masculine. And I didn't grow up Catholic, but I grew up in a town that was 95% Catholic. So I was able to observe that. And I was married into a Baptist, faith. And it was very similar, where I felt like I had to be very submissive, which was putting me in my feminine energy, but it was also kind of disempowering me, a little bit. And so, I had to learn how to stand in my power and feel safe in my feminine energy without having to be overly aggressive or assertive all the time in that masculine energy.
Yeah, or to try and prove it.
Mm-hmm.
I used to spend so much time trying to prove or being reactive, thinking I needed to like front some kind of behavior to
Mm-hmm.
be dot, 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 dot. And, some of that comes from the nervous system too, trying to make everything like familiar so that it feels safe. But
Absolutely. And that's a key point too. When we're working with the subconscious, we're also working with the nervous system. We're working with the DNA. We're working with all of these different circuitry, within the body. And so oftentimes when we make that shift, I know when I'm working with someone and we make that shift, they can present the energy in a variety of ways, through laughing, through crying, through goosebumps, through, they can feel the pain moving from, maybe they started in their shoulder and then now it's moving into the back, and then we move it through the body. So it's very holistic in how, when we're tapping into the subconscious mind, and how we're crossing all borders, right? From the spiritual aspect, the physical, the emotional, the mental. And that's why I think it's so powerful. It's so powerful because we aren't just looking at the physical, right? We're diving deeper. We're getting in there, a lot deeper as to, there's always an emotional aspect to the physical, so it's like, okay, you have back pain. What is the emotional aspect of that? What does the spine do? What does the back do? It supports us, right? So where are you not feeling supported in your life? And, emotionally, what is the emotion behind that? And so it's always just, the body speaks to us so literally. It's just understanding that, and I've had people say, I can't believe healing is this easy, and I'm like, yeah, it's because we have a limited belief that healing has to be tough, and it has to take forever. And it has to, be this agonizing experience. Now, not to say it's not hard sometimes, but it doesn't have to be as hard as we have been taught that it needs
it also,
to be.
yeah, and it doesn't have to take 5, 10, 15 years just because it took you 40 to get to the point where you're at. I mean, I have seen people's 20-year back pain go away in one Psych-K session just by transforming some trauma
Mm-hmm.
and having a different route to go down in the mind, a new perception.
Love that. I love that. So, Krishna, is there anything else that you want to share that maybe we haven't touched on?
I mean, there's so much I could share, but yeah, I just want people to know that they are limitless as creators, and there are tools out there that help people quickly create life as they want it to be and quickly transform stresses and traumas and triggers that maybe haven't been able to change or grow from before. And working with the subconscious mind is going to be the quickest way to create change and expand your beliefs. And a lot of people are hearing about the subconscious in the health and wellness. It's definitely trending, but they don't know how to work with it. They don't really know what it is. And I think you and I know this was how it was when I first became an acupuncturist, definitely in the education role of teaching people about what we do and why the subconscious is magic. It's the gold.
Absolutely. And I, even too, being an acupuncturist, understanding the energetic system and, understanding the meridians, the points, the chakras, all of that, and being able to also apply that to what you do is amazing. And I do feel like we go on these journeys of our own healing And then we learn, we learn these, and then we get to a point where, we're the student for a while, and then we're the teacher. And then we go back to being the student for a while, and then we're the teacher. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope to always be a student, but after 18, 19, 20 years of doing something, hopefully, and I feel pretty comfortable saying, like, I did master being an acupuncturist. I help so many people really quickly, but it's definitely time for my own growth. And so,
yeah, it's like we grow out of that sometimes. I notice that. I can tell when I'm doing those quantum leaps. It's like, okay, I learned this modality and I'm utilizing it a lot, but now it's time for me to expand my knowledge. And what's been neat for me is I can now, and I'm sure you do this too, you take a session, you may say, okay, it's a Psych-K session, but or it's an EFT tapping session, but I'm recognizing I'm using all of the healing modalities that I have learned in my session. And it comes out a lot in my quantum healing sessions. They'll be in a theta state and I'm tapping on myself and I'm releasing, stuff for them, or I'm muscle testing them in the quantum healing, or, I've even started to speak light language in some of these healing sessions. So there's so much that can come through, but a lot of it is just taking all the pieces of the puzzle that we've learned and then applying them in our sessions. So it's hard for me sometimes when people say, what is it that you do? It's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to it.
I know.
And then the energy from the client brings forward what it is that they need. So the session can be very different. There's many sessions where I don't incorporate the tapping because that's not what they need, So do you notice that too with your sessions?
Oh my God, so much. I mean, my skill set is vast at this point, and I don't say that from any kind of ego. It's just that I've had to create something on my scheduler that's like 90 minutes of my time, create your own adventure, or 2 hours of my time, create your own adventure. Because I'll have so many people message and be like, I'm not sure what I want to schedule with you. I want to do it all. And I'm like, just show up and we'll figure it out when you get there. And it's mostly like, and I feel this from you as well, like I've been doing healing for lifetimes. It's so natural for me. And so I'm a space holder and I'm an intuitive. I had a Psych-K session when I first learned about it from my teacher. I didn't feel any different. It's because she wasn't my facilitator. She was my teacher of the processes, but she wasn't my facilitator. She's really not intuitive. She's not really a great space holder, honestly. I love her.
That's a great topic.
But she wasn't my facilitator. And so people come into me, you do one balance and it's a lot, but we usually get to 2, sometimes 3 in a session, because when you're intuitive and you know how to guide people, yes, and you know how to witness and see them and hear them, I mean, you do just get to where you need to go a lot quicker. So
there's such a difference between teaching and facilitating. Totally. And guiding, I can completely resonate with that because, when you're teaching, you're in an energy of, I'm giving this energy, where then you're facilitating, you're in a space of giving and receiving, and you're kind of holding that energy there. And yeah, I love that. I love that concept because that's what I do in my quantum healing. I facilitate a meditation or a deep meditative state. I guide people and the energy takes us where the energy needs to go. And it's like peeling away layers of an onion. And so they may present with, I have all of this anxiety, but really we get down deeper to the root cause, and it could be rejection or abandonment or trauma or grief or, whatever it is. But that's the beauty of working with a subconscious mind, is it's kind of a no BS, a no BS way of healing, right? Because the subconscious, once you get in there, the energy is going to be like, yeah, you're focused on this, but we're going to go a little bit deeper and we're going to figure out why.
Yeah. And with Psych-K, we're taught how to do muscle testing with someone. And I really love that because I'm not muscle testing someone and then deciding what the response is. Even if I feel like it's obvious, like I keep the poker face and ask them, was that strong or weak? And I love it because even when somebody tries to alter the response, when you're pressing down on the arm to muscle test, they can't, because it's the subconscious.
It is, and it has to speak truth. It has to speak truth. So, Krishna, when you do your sessions, do you do them in person or remotely or both?
I'm so glad you asked me that. Yes, I can do them virtually. Yes, I can do them in person. And when they're virtual, I just ask for permission. That's another part of the Psych-K process, asking for permission to muscle test on someone's behalf, asking if it's safe and appropriate to balance at this time. And I love that part of the process.
Absolutely. And so it's like a connection. The way I look at it, it's like you're making a phone call to someone. And if they don't pick up, they don't want the connection, right? But if they pick up, then you're creating an energetic connection. And that's very similar, when we're muscle testing, is we have to create an energetic connection through giving us permission, giving us permission by saying, yes, I give you permission to connect to my energy and see what's going on, in there.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. This has been a very, very in depth. I love this. I love talking anything about the subconscious mind. And so if anybody feels, like they're resonating with you, how can they reach out to you? How can they find out more information? How can they schedule a session with you?
Thank you for asking. I have a resources page on my website. My website's going to tell so much about the subconscious, about Psych-K, about the transformation work I do, about me. But I did put some beautiful practices on the resources page that are just free, and you definitely get a sense of how I work with people if you don't already know. So that's there, like somatic practices that teach people how to connect what their body's experiencing to what their mind is believing, teaching people how to feel safe in their bodies in that way, and also how to stay present and in their bodies. Because a lot of times with stress or trauma, people can't sit still or stay present because it doesn't feel safe. There's some breath work practices on there. I guide people through a very big, powerful pranayama breath work practice. There's a few practices on there. And then Instagram or LinkedIn. It's all just under my name, Krishna Avalon.
That's beautiful. And I love that, simple things like breath work. We don't think of that. These last 3 days, I've been feeling a tremendous amount of energy from the shift, into Leo season, and that very powerful, fiery energy coming through. And I started to have some heart palpitations, and immediately I went to breath work. That was the first thing I did. And within minutes, that energy had transmuted, it had moved through my body. And so I encourage you, check out Krishna's website and learn more about breath work. That is so beneficial, and it's so simple. And I think many of us don't even know how to breathe properly. We have a lot of shallow breathing, and just bringing in more oxygen, into our body. And it's fascinating how just simply breathing deep, and in certain patterns and certain rhythms can move energy out so quickly.
Oh my God, it's tremendous. So just know if you do that, it's not like the gentle, sweet breath work you might do at the end of a yoga class. It's meant to clear the emotion off of your body that is either conscious or not conscious, yours or not yours. It can be very physical, it can be emotional, but it's incredibly powerful. So helpful.
Absolutely. So helpful. Well, I appreciate you spending time with me today, Krishna, and sharing all of the wonderful things that you are doing and how you're helping people transform and move through these limiting belief, self-sabotaging patterns. And life doesn't have to be so hard. We can live in a state of joy. We can live in a state of harmony and balance and peace. It just takes us a little bit to recognize that, right? To recognize that we can heal, and we can heal quickly.